The judge's gavel slammed down, sealing Helena's fate. Her voice quivered, trembling against the weight of injustice before the crowded courtroom. Suddenly, the heavy doors burst open, and the room froze. Miguel entered, not as a worried husband, but as a Supreme Court justice. His commanding presence and piercing gaze carried the authority of true justice, a silent promise that the trial was far from over. The entire room fell into stunned silence. Helena Martinez sat upright in the defendant's chair. Her modest navy dress contrasted sharply with the grand marble columns and polished mahogany panels of the courtroom. At 34, her quiet strength and dignity remained unbroken, though the burden of false accusations pressed heavily upon her shoulders. The chamber itself seemed built to intimidate, a space designed to remind her that she didn't belong. Judge William Crawford, known for his harsh rulings and powerful connections, glared down with cold contempt. His reputation was built on being merciless, but those who knew the truth understood how selectively that justice was applied. Helena had only fought to protect her community center, a haven for underprivileged children. She never imagined it would lead to fabricated charges of obstruction and forgery. Her husband Miguel had promised to return from Washington in time, but as the proceedings began, Helena could only cling to her worn leather journal, the only shield she had against a system determined to silence her. "All rise," the bailiff commanded. Judge Crawford swept in, his black robe swirling like a storm cloud. Helena rose with trembling hands clasped tightly, trying to mask her fear. Case 247B, the State versus Helena Martinez. Charges: obstruction of justice and tampering with government documents, the clerk read in a flat, detached voice. Crawford's gaze bore into her. "How do you plead?" "Not guilty, Your Honor," Helena replied softly, but with unwavering strength. The eyes of the spectators, officers, and jury bore into her, some bored, some skeptical, but none sympathetic. District Attorney Richard Vaughn, ambitious and sharply dressed, rose smoothly. "Your Honor, the state requests that bail be denied. Ms. Martinez has no respect for the law and poses a flight risk." Helena's young and nervous attorney, Mark Simmons, scrambled to defend her. "Your Honor, my client has deep roots in this community. She runs a children's center that serves over 200 families. She's not going anywhere." Crawford's lips curled in a predatory half-smile. "Mr. Simmons, your client is accused of falsifying documents to obstruct a multi-million-dollar project. These are not trivial charges." Helena's stomach twisted. She knew the truth. The project was a corporate land grab that would destroy families and shut down the community center that meant everything to those children. "The prosecution calls Regina Parker," Vaughn announced. The city planning commissioner stepped forward confidently. Her polished professional demeanor was crafted to paint Helena as a reckless agitator. Vaughn asked, "Ms. Parker, can you describe your interactions with the defendant?" Regina adjusted her designer glasses. Ms. Martinez repeatedly disrupted the city's planning process. When informed of the approved development, she submitted fraudulent landmark claims supported by signatures obtained under false pretenses. Helena's face burned with indignation. Those signatures were genuine, collected from families who had relied on the center for generations. She leaned toward Simmons, whispering urgently, but he dismissed her with a nervous pat on the hand. "And, is there proof of this falsification?" Vaughn pressed. "Yes," Regina said smugly. "Experts found irregularities in the signatures and confirmed that Ms. Martinez misrepresented the forms." Simmons's cross-examination was painfully weak, with objections sustained at nearly every turn. The prosecution's case grew stronger with each passing moment. During recess, Helena sat alone at the defense table while her attorney stepped out to take a call. Nearby, a court reporter whispered, "This is pointless. Crawford already made up his mind." "What do you mean?" another asked. "The development is financed by Crawford's brother-in-law. This trial is just for show." Helena's blood ran cold. She had suspected corruption, but hearing it confirmed filled her with dread. As the court resumed, she discreetly pulled out her phone and sent a desperate message to Miguel. "It's worse than we thought. The judge is compromised. Need you." Crawford noticed instantly. "Ms. Martinez, surrender your phone immediately. This is a courtroom, not a cafe." A bailiff took the device from her hand, as Helena silently prayed that Miguel had received the message. "Now then," Crawford sneered, "let us proceed without further distractions from the defendant." Witness after witness paraded across the stand, their testimonies rehearsed, polished, too perfect. The truth was being buried, and everyone in the room knew it. The prosecution's case painted Helena as a reckless activist who would cross any line to push her agenda. Her lawyer's objections were weak, and every attempt was crushed beneath Judge Crawford's gavel. Helena could see the jury's expressions, hardening, poisoned by evidence that mixed fragments of truth with carefully fabricated lies. When Judge Crawford abruptly declared that the trial would continue late into the evening, it was obvious he was rushing toward a verdict that had been decided long before she ever entered the courtroom. Helena rose, summoning her courage. "Your Honor, I request a recess to consult with different counsel. My current representation is failing me." Crawford's eyes narrowed into dangerous slits. "Ms. Martinez, outbursts will not be tolerated in this courtroom. One more interruption, and I will hold you in contempt." The message was clear. She was to sit silently while her life, and the community she had fought to protect, was dismantled piece by piece. As the prosecution prepared their final witness, the heavy doors at the back of the chamber creaked open. All movement stopped. Heads turned. A tall, commanding figure entered with calm assurance. Miguel Martinez walked with measured steps, his tailored suit and silver-streaked hair projecting quiet authority. Recognition rippled across the gallery. Whispers swelled into gasps as the prosecutors exchanged uneasy glances. "Proceedings will continue," Judge Crawford snapped, his gavel striking the bench with unnecessary force, but the faint tremor in his voice betrayed his nerves. Miguel reached the barrier separating the audience from the court. "Your Honor," his deep, steady voice carried across the room, "I request permission to approach." Judge Crawford's face drained of color. "Justice Martinez," he stammered, "this is unexpected. We are in the middle of proceedings." "Indeed, you are, William," Miguel replied, deliberately using the judge's first name. "Proceedings involving my wife." The gallery erupted in murmurs. Helena turned, relief flooding her eyes as she locked onto her husband's steady gaze. "The court will take a 30-minute recess," Crawford announced abruptly, rising from his chair. 15 will suffice," Miguel countered smoothly, "and I'll require the use of your chambers." The balance of power shifted in that instant. Crawford hesitated, then nodded tersely. 15 minutes. Court is in recess." As Miguel strode forward, the bailiff scrambled to open the gate. He embraced Helena briefly, whispering something only she could hear, and the color returned to her face. District Attorney Vaughn stepped forward with a politician's smile. "Justice Martinez, what an honor." Miguel cut him short with a sharp, unyielding look. "Mr. Vaughn, I suggest you use this recess to reconsider your position. We'll be discussing suppressed evidence and prosecutorial misconduct very shortly." Without waiting for a reply, he guided Helena toward the judge's chambers, leaving behind a courtroom thick with stunned silence. Inside the chamber, the air was charged with tension. The once imposing mahogany desk now looked like a barricade, behind which Crawford had retreated, his earlier authority slipping away. Miguel's presence filled the room, not with intimidation, but with the calm, relentless weight of justice. He placed a leather portfolio firmly on the desk. "William," Miguel began evenly, "perhaps you'd like to explain why my wife is being railroaded with manufactured evidence." Crawford adjusted his robes nervously. "Justice Martinez, I assure you the proceedings are being handled according to—" "Spare me," Miguel interrupted, tapping the portfolio. "This contains 3 things: authenticated documents proving the community center's historic status, sworn affidavits from 7 residents confirming Helena's integrity and gathering signatures, and financial records directly tying you to Meridian Development through your brother-in-law's company. Crawford's face paled as his eyes locked on the folder. His lips formed a weak protest, but his body betrayed him. He was cornered, and he knew it. The Judicial Ethics Committee did not share Crawford's denial. They had been quietly investigating his courtroom for months, noting the suspicious pattern of cases that somehow always tilted in favor of Meridian Development. Helena sat silently, awe flickering in her eyes as she watched her husband in his element. This wasn't only Miguel defending her. This was Justice Martinez, the fierce guardian of judicial integrity, confronting corruption head-on, even when it reached uncomfortably close to home. "You have a choice, William," Miguel said evenly, his voice a steady hammer. "Either you recuse yourself right now, citing a conflict of interest you forgot to disclose, or this portfolio finds its way to the Chief Justice's desk by morning." The words hung heavy in the chambers. Before Crawford could respond, the door opened and District Attorney Vaughn slipped inside. His trademark politician's smile faltered instantly at the charged scene before him. "I thought we might discuss a resolution," Vaughn began cautiously, but his voice trailed off under Miguel's piercing gaze. "Perfect timing, Mr. Vaughn," Miguel replied, turning toward him with deliberate calm. "We were just reviewing your office's failure to disclose exculpatory evidence. Evidence you've had for 3 weeks. Evidence that proves my wife's innocence." Vaughn's smile dissolved completely. "There must be some misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding," Miguel cut in sharply, "is your belief that you could use my wife as a stepping stone for your political career. The email from the planning office confirming the authenticity of those historical documents, your office received it. You simply never gave it to the defense. Unfortunately for you, that email has already been forwarded to the State Bar's Ethics Committee." Helena could hardly believe what she was witnessing. These two men, so powerful, so untouchable just hours ago, now seemed to shrink before Miguel's unrelenting presence. Yet her husband carried no arrogance, no gloating. His eyes held only sorrow, the pain of a man watching the institution he had devoted his life to corrode from within. "Here is what happens next," Miguel said, his tone final. "Judge Crawford, you will recuse yourself on grounds of personal connections that compromise your impartiality. Mr. Vaughn, you will file a motion to dismiss all charges with prejudice, admitting to prosecutorial misconduct. If you refuse—" Miguel paused, letting the silence crush them. "Then by tomorrow morning, this entire case will explode into a national scandal about corruption in the courts. Either way, my wife leaves this courthouse today as a free woman." Crawford sagged back into his chair, years of cultivated authority crumbling in a single moment. I'll prepare my recusal immediately." "As will I," Vaughn added hastily. "The motion to dismiss will be filed." Miguel nodded once, then turned, his expression softening as he met Helena's eyes. He took her hand gently. "Ready to go home?" When they emerged from the chambers, the courtroom fell silent. Every eye followed as Miguel led Helena past the defense table, straight toward the doors. Moments later, Crawford returned, his robes seeming to weigh him down like chains. "This court is adjourned," he declared hollowly. "All charges against the defendant are dismissed with prejudice." On the courthouse steps, Helena gripped Miguel's hand tightly. "Justice looks very different from this side," she whispered. That evening, golden light spilled across their modest kitchen as they shared a quiet dinner far removed from marble columns and tense chambers. Miguel, sleeves rolled up, looked more like the passionate law student she had fallen in love with 20 years earlier than the Supreme Court justice he had become. "I never wanted to rely on your position," Helena admitted softly. "Everything I've done with the community center, I wanted it to stand on its own, on its merits." Miguel reached across the table, entwining his fingers with hers. "What happened today wasn't about power, Helena. It was about truth, about dragging it into the light when others tried to bury it. You fought for those families the right way, petitions, organizing, the law. They were the ones who broke the rules, not you." Helena's eyes softened as she thought of the children who had found hope within the center's walls. The irony is that Judge Crawford could have seen its value any time, not in the bricks or beams, but in the lives it held together. Miguel's voice grew firm, filled with the passion that had always defined him. Some people only recognize value when it appears on a balance sheet, but justice isn't measured in profit. As dusk settled outside their window, Helena felt the weight of the day melt into peace. "Tomorrow I'll tell the families the center is safe," she said, smiling at last. "And you'll return to Washington to fight your battles there." "Different battlegrounds," Miguel agreed, squeezing her hand. "But the same war." In their quiet kitchen, away from the gaze of the world, they both understood what they had always believed. True justice wasn't won in courtrooms or headlines, but in the courage to stand always for what was right.